So we're just waiting for our guest for today to come in, and then we're going to start up our discussion for today, which will be a different one. It's going to be a little bit about art and creativity. Let's see. Humberto,
Antoine, good afternoon. How's it going?
going well. How are you?
Good, good. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm looking forward to this chat.
Me too. It's a different chat today because I've been doing lots of brand owners, but then I wanted to always switch it up a little bit and get some behind the scenes people because, as you know, sometimes the creative and artsy people don't always get their moment to talk, but there's a
Well,
very important part of the industry though.
our creative introverts like myself, we graciously do it behind the scenes,
I know.
and that is okay. But nonetheless, thanks for reaching out. Thanks for the invitation. I'm looking forward to sharing this platform with you, which is it's a great idea. I'm loving it. I'm tuning in every day, so I'm already a fan.
It's funny because you said introvert, and I'm probably a big introvert. I mean, I have a whole book on introvert people that I'm supposed to be reading called Quiet. And I was just thinking about doing this, like, has always, I've thought about doing like podcasting for a while, but like the act of actually doing it and being in front of people is always like, oh, do I really want to do that? Or can I get around it somehow? And then
Right.
this happened, and I saw other people doing it, and I was like, you know what? This is the time to like kind of push yourself out there and do something a little bit different.
Well, I mean, you have a creative background, so you would understand that, as creatives, we're always exploring new things and trying new things, and just kind of putting yourself out there. It's part of what we do, right? So at
Right.
some point, it's always to get that feedback, that criticism, but it's hard for us to kind of step into that spotlight at times. But not that we're shy or anything like that, but we tend to warm up to people, and then we're like in that comfort zone, and it's not like you're antisocial or anything, but we're definitely introverts
Yeah, and I
in
don't know
that
about you,
respect.
but like definitely in like a meeting kind of setup, usually like it's us, the creative types, who have to take in everything that I said. Because like
Right.
we'll have somebody else there who's like the business minded person who's like talking and keeping a conversation going, but sometimes they're not the ones who are listening to like the finer details. So like when you
Right.
go to design something, you pick up on something, you go, oh, when you started talking about that, you saw them like flinch, and they're like, saw them what? You're like, they kind of recoiled a little bit, or they kind of pulled back, and I think we need to go in this other direction. So it's like
Right.
always us who are having to listen and absorb everything that's being said, rather than just who you're talking to, like the whole room, and
and,
so
and that's a big part of what we do. We have to listen, instead of jumping into conclusions and then recommending stuff that is not even necessary, or that could be applied to that specific project. So listening is a big part of what we do. um,
definitely. And I see we have some great people in here today. We have Lewis, who I got the pleasure of speaking to yesterday. It's been funny
yes.
because, like I said, I'm treating this almost like a trade show, in that, at a trade show experience, you're going to go to booth to booth to booth to booth and talk to people. But usually
Right.
those conversations are about 10 minutes long, and they're interrupted every couple of sentences. So you're just, you don't get a full conversation. So being able to spend an hour with different people in the industry like every day, and just has been fun for me because, like I said, it's almost like that trade show experience without the travel, without the the hustle and bustle, without the suit.
Absolutely. And we've been on that side of the trade show, and you tend to stay out of manufacturers' way, because everybody is on their A game. All the sales reps, the sales managers, and the presidents, and everyone involved it's on their A game and they're in that sales mode. So, you can have a conversation up to a point, but it's somewhat business related. Hey, how's your first day? How did,
Right.
that kind of stuff is very superficial.
Right. So what I wanted to do today, especially, is like I said, I've worked with you for a couple of years now through the media
Yes.
side, basically, and I'm aware of your work, but I don't know if everybody else is. So what I thought would be a fun thing is for people to get to know you and to get to know what you do. Because too, I mean, this is like a great time for, I don't know about you, but like I'm trying to find ways to stay connected, to stay creative during this time so that it's just not a full stop, because it's hard to get back into the swing of things when you do kind of fully stop. And I was getting to that point, like I think week 2 of quarantine, and I was just like, like this is getting rough. This is like, the news items are slowing down. So for me, who's working with websites, it's like there's nothing to really post. There's nothing to really do email blast about. People aren't reading, their work emails about, but they're at home
Right.
and they're in that casual environment. They're having to help with their kids. They're having to help their spouse out, and it's just like, what do we do? How can we stay creative and stay connected? So that's where deep cuts came up. I was like, you know what? For me, I interview a lot of people, work with the magazines and different stories, press releases, but you only scratch the surface with a lot of that stuff. You only go so deep.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And, you're right. It's, the first 2 weeks, fine. And then, you start, bouncing off the walls. And, in my case, we're always displaying about 50% of the work that we do on our website anyway. So, I've been doing this now for 10 plus years. So, you ride the wave, right? So, when it's peak times, you're working on clients' work. And then when it's downtime, you work on your own stuff. So this has been the perfect time to update my website, to take more photos of products. So, I've been reading, taking photography, updating the website, writing, and stepping a little bit out of my comfort zone. I'm trying some video stuff now. So, it's part of what we do, right? Creative, step out of
Right.
that comfort zone, try new things. So that's what I've been doing during this quarantine time. And of course, reaching out to people and calling people to see how they're doing and making sure everybody is doing okay.
Right. So I guess to start off, I mean, for those people who don't have the pleasure of knowing you, can you just tell us just a little bit about you and like what you do and the company that you kind of work with?
That's easy. I draw pictures all day. You know, we
But that's not
doodle
the
stuff.
sum of everything. That's not that's a very simplistic introvert kind of way of blanking it. It's not really just that. You do
Well,
a lot more.
let me tell you a little backstory on what I consider my first cigar client, right? So Gabriel Pinares, which from Creativas Group, his cousin knows a guy by the name of Willie Herrera, right? So back in 2008, I get a call from Willie, um, and I go to his shop, El Titán de Bronce, which is one of the best factories here in Little Havana for cigars. They do the Herrera Esteli Miami, and they do the Goldie from La Palina, and they're very well respected. So Willie, if you're watching, I love you, brother. So I went over there for a meeting. He needed some stuff done, and I walk in there and I'm like, this is amazing. So obviously, I didn't want to ask for a free cigar, right? That's like the first thing you don't do. You don't
Yeah.
ask for free stuff, right? So I walk away thinking I want to work with Willie. Um, it's so cool. Uh, so I pitched this idea to him. I said, Willie, I will work for cigars, and we bartered. I wanted it to smoke, their redemption line, their Maduros, and he was up for it, and that was my first cigar gig, working with Willie and Sandy and all the wonderful people at Titan de Bronce, and I ended up bartering, and he was up for it. I was very grateful, and that kind of opened the doors to the cigar industry. And from there, we've been really working with different manufacturers on a creative level, on a strategy level, on a consulting, creative strategy, all of the above, really. So it's been a fun ride, and it's unlike any other industry that I've done work with. You know what I mean? Whether it's food and beverage, fashion, hospitality, um, because cigar package design is only really half of my business. We have Sia Design, which is kind of have your attention. I have a great business partner, Cleveland Cook, who after my wife is probably my second marriage, and we get along great. So he's really been a good friend, a mentor, and I just can't say enough about him. So, but that was really my introduction into the cigar industry, and what our participation is within different manufacturers. We come in and it's always nice to get like an outsider's point of view. So even with companies that have in-house creatives, I've been asked to come in and just kind of sprinkle that magic and bring in that flavor from the outside, a different point of view, and contribute that way.
But how important has it been for you to kind of expand your network? Because you just talked about, you don't just do cigars, you do other projects too. And as a creative, I mean, you need to have that widespread of a client base. It's almost like investing in a portfolio. You don't invest in just one type of stock.
It's been absolutely the most important thing that I've done as far as keeping things interesting. You know what I mean? The idea of working for an ad agency. You get assigned to X brand, right? And for the end of times, that's all you're gonna see. You're gonna see that logo, those colors. You're assigned to that client, and boom. You know what I mean? So on any given day, I can shut. It's like cleansing your palate. You know what I mean? I can shut the book on cigars, and then do something completely different. I like my last project, we ended up doing a packaging design for uh, Fabian, a good friend of mine out in California, for extra virgin organic olive oil. So, there you go.
All right.
So logo, packaging design. So that was really a nice project. And that's how I keep things keeping that's how I keep my perspective kind of, always looking at things from a different angle, because I do have clients that are not in the cigar industry.
And I like what you said about when you approached Willie about working with him. It wasn't, hey, I want to work with you. Here's my price. You said, let's
Right.
harder. Like
Right.
you have something that you're trying to basically get off the ground. I have, a service I can offer you, but you don't have to. It doesn't have to be a monetary thing. So
Right.
I think I like that idea, because I don't think a lot of people always think about that. You always think of offering your service at a price.
Right. And again, if the whole industry of cigars, right, really caught my attention, I walked away like that's really cool, right? So how do I tap into that industry? How do I get my first portfolio piece, right?
Right.
From a client, and then I can have something to show. So I thought that was the perfect opportunity. And let me tell you something: whether it's personal or business related, timing is always key, right? It's all about timing.
Right.
So, and I was having a conversation with a very good friend of mine this morning, and I told him, look, at the end of the day, you have to be good to people. You work with people, right? You don't work with companies. Maybe the company logo is on that paycheck, but you work with people. So having that connection with people, having that compatibility, because a lot of the stuff that we do too is it's about how do we gel together, right? How do we, it's like you have that sales driven guy at the head of a company, right? And then you put that left brain and that right brain, and then that's where the magic happens. You know what I mean? You come up with a campaign, and from a business standpoint, from a sales standpoint, the numbers that you want to hit. So what do we need to implement, right? Because then now my job is to interpret that visually, whether it's at a POS display, store signage, social media graphics, whatever that campaign is going to require, it's up to me to create.
Where do you draw inspiration from?
It's now that we're quarantined, I there was a website that had virtual tours of like 12 different museums. And I remember my last trip to New York. I went to the MoMA, and I'm a big fan of Mondrian and Jackson Pollock and Picasso and all these guys that I think Mondrian is probably where I get all my grids. Every time I start on a new layout, I start with a grid. So it's definitely art, of course. Anything that's visual, reading. I pick up architectural magazines sometimes. So I'll go through an architectural magazine and I'll see maybe like a pattern or like a texture or like a repetitive some sort of pattern, and sometimes you see that on some of the cigar bands that I do.
Yeah. So what's the latest kind of cigar project that you've had that we might have seen out in the stores and all?
Out in the stores, I would say definitely the Villiger Cuellar Black Forest, for my friends over at Villiger Cigars, and definitely the Cuevas Reserva. Which Rafael Nodal last week said that blue is the new red. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So um, having that creative input constantly, it's you pick up on different trends, you know what I mean, and where that's going. But blue is a very tricky color to work with, so you have to do a couple of different runs and nail that blue just to make sure it's on point. But the Cuevas Reserva line came out pristine. It looks beautiful. That blue, it's really striking, and so now you see a lot of people jump on that blue. And then most recently, it's not out on stores yet, but it was a collaboration between Ernesto Perez Carrillo and Heinrich Villiger, which is a Villiger TAA exclusive 2020. That was really an honor to work, to have a small part on the packaging aspect of the project. But I mean, those are two icons within the cigar industry. So I feel very blessed to have been a part of that project.
I know with Michael Herklotz the other day, I was talking to him about you know about the having a story to attach to your brand, because that's always one of his big things. You can have a brand, but people have to connect with it, and I think part of that story is also the visual communication of it. Because when you walk into a humidor, I mean, sometimes, I mean, how do you figure out what to buy? It's either you heard a story about it, the brand owner, or the colors are really pretty. Something superficial to some people, but it's like the colors are really pretty or different. Like you said, you know, coming out with blues now rather than, the old school reds and golds and browns and stuff like that. Um, I mean, I guess since you started in the industry, how have you seen like the design curve kind of change and evolve?
Bigger is better, the more gold and foil stamping that you have, the more embossing that you have. Now you have like hologram different foils, and so it's definitely gotten a lot more elaborate. And it's not that we're making bands bigger, right? So we still have the same amount of real estate, but we're still piling on a lot of different components into a small piece of real estate, which is really tough sometimes. But I think that for the most part, everyone is in a humidor to compete for your attention.
Right.
You're always going to have, the consumer that walks in with that, with that yearly magazine and say, hey, I'm looking for these 25 cigars.
Right.
But right, so you have those, and definitely that's not part of your regular customers rotation. But I like to think of a humidor as, not that everyone is picking up a newspaper nowadays, but I like, it's just like a big page of ads, right? So it's like, where does your eye go? Your eyes are like jumping and jumping and jumping until you either saw a shelf talker, or you saw something shiny or holographic, or something caught your eye. If you just happen to wander into a humidor and start seeing what's new, right? You come in and you ask the shop owner, hey, so what's new? Did you bring anything new? Or otherwise, you see guys just like whoop, and they
Yeah.
they know exactly what they're gonna get. So as they make their way into wherever it is, that corner that they're going, is that you want to hopefully grab their attention. It's like a billboard. You're driving and you have 2-3 seconds. It's a nanosecond to convey and communicate your message.
I'm curious to figure out from you, like, what are some of your clients' concerns now? I mean, because I know, like, in the cigar industry, like, we have this discussion all the time with the magazine. People, as your standard marketing people kind of phase out and they get replaced by newer people, the younger they are, the paper doesn't really have the same, appeal to them as a person kind of in the 35 on up kind of age group. So, like, what are their concerns to you? Like, what are they asking for? What are they hoping to get out of their designs?
Well, and again, they have that's a very good question, because um, I get feedback on my work all the time. I think my wife and my daughter are probably my worst critics, right? It's like, yeah, this one was really good. I love it. That other one, but it's like I get presented with a project brief, right? So it's I'm getting a set of guidelines, parameters for a specific project. So I it's up to me to construct an identity for that brand based on MSRP, right? I'm not going to create a band for a $5 stick that I would for a $25 stick, right? It's just, if your MSRP is at $25, please make it look like $25, right? So there's always, I like to build an identity around brands, and the way I know best how to do is, flip through magazines and cut out stuff, right? It's like, where does this guy live? What does he
Mm-hmm.
drive? What watch does he wear, right? Like, where does he shop for clothes? Like,
It's like a vision
so
board almost.
it's like a mood board, like a vision board,
Right.
correct? So, and it all revolves around that MSRP, and what the client will ultimately like to see. Now, it is my, and that is just a jumping off point, right? Now, it is up to me to bring in that knowledge, that skill set, and lead them, right? Because if I see that this is not going to work, then I got to put my foot down and say, hey, you're the CEO, but listen to me. This is not going
Right.
to work because X, Y, and Z. I think we should go this route and implement this. And and a lot of those decisions sometimes come, um, believe it or not, because of time restrictions. If somebody wants to send something, to be made in China, then obviously, we'll get it back in like 3-4 months, and hopefully, it'll be coronavirus free.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
right, so but everything is like 3 months out. So if we don't have that luxury, then we start trimming stuff, right? Then we start compromising here and there in order to get the project done by this trade show, or this date, or this launch party, right? So we do compromise, but yes, clients do look at me for advice, for input, And that's what's beautiful about the whole collaboration project, process.
Yeah, I remember like I started out in the cigar industry as a designer, but on the media side, so the magazines.
Right.
Um, and back then it was I had no intention of writing or doing any of that. Using that part of my degree, it was all visual communication. So it was I was kind of probably more in your position, except like I said, I wasn't working with creating bands and stuff. I was creating on making a nice layout that people could easily, you know, get through without feeling like it was, blocking them in any way. So I'm always curious to see how other creatives get through it. Cause I know with me, like when I finally had my breaking point with design, it was that, sometimes you'll work with a client and they go, oh, I don't know what, I don't know what I want. Just do something. And you're like, okay, like what? And they're like, I don't know. They're like, just surprise me. I'm like, no. It's like,
No.
what do you want? Like you said, like show me, like how do you deal with clients like that sometimes who may not have an idea of what they want, even a starting point.
I found myself, first of all, we do have a creative questionnaire that we've refined over the years. So
That's cool.
we feel like we fine tuned it and we're able to ask the right questions. But I find myself often now asking more why questions, right? So we're thinking about doing this, XYC brand. I'm like, why? Well, because, I think it would be a good way to have, this blend profile or this strength, have like a full to medium, a full body cigar out in the market. So why do you feel like you need to have a full body cigar in the market? Well, because, we've been selling a lot of Connecticut's and, sales are really down on this side of our portfolio. And why do you think, why are sales down? What do you think sales are down? So I keep on asking why questions till I get to,
The bottom.
but right, but to ask me to fly without a GPS or with a blindfold on and just see what sticks on the wall, that is just that is just spinning your wheels. That is just busy work. It doesn't work like that. And over the years, we've relied on the soldiers on the ground, sales reps. The sales reps probably bring in the most valuable feedback. They are the ones talking to the customers. They are the ones talking to shop owners. They are the ones doing the events. They are the ones, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So they bring in that valuable information from the ground, and
And they don't
believe
have
it or
anything to lose in it. I mean, they just want to sell the product, so they're not gonna spare your feelings. Basically, they're not gonna hold back and say, "Oh my gosh, they said it was great." And they're like, "Look, they said this
so
color was off. They said this didn't resonate. This doesn't stick out enough on the shelf." And that's good feedback, like you said, because it's that honest feedback that helps everybody.
those are the boots on the ground, and my hats off to all those street dogs out there, because it's not easy. From city to city to hotel from hotel, and they have families and all that stuff. So it's their feedback is just valuable.
I, when you said the creative questionnaire, because that's something so simple that I think we don't anybody, none of us like really think about that, like having like a simple creative questionnaire that, like you said, and then you tweak it as you go along, so that
Right.
you know what works. Because I remember, you know, for me as a media person, I'm always trying to refine my interview skills and figure out how to get the best story. Because sometimes you'll spend all this time writing a story, and the person will read it and they'll be like, "That's the story." You're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah." You're like, "That's what you said," and they're like, "No, that's not what I wanted." So Oprah
Right.
had this great thing when she said, so that before I do any interview, I sit down with a person. And the very first question I ask them, which usually doesn't get filmed or anything, is, "What's your intent? What do you want to
Right.
get out of this interview?" She said, and usually it's such a profound question because they're not used to that kind of question. So it's not usually for TV or whatever I'm doing. She said, it's usually just for us. She said, because I want them to think about what they're getting ready to say. And then I can think about the questions I need to ask. And she said, because without that, you don't know. You're just randomly kind of getting around with it. And sometimes you don't have to ask that question every time, because sometimes like when we were having this conversation, I said, Humberto's a creative person. Like, let's get
Right.
that story out there. That's at least my intent out of it. But if I just met you on the street and I said, hey, let's just do a video, and we sat down, and you would be like,
Right.
it would be a weird. It would
Right.
be. We wouldn't get a lot out of it because we wouldn't know what the intent, is.
Absolutely. And again, it does take time, and practice makes perfect. But one of the top three questions that have made it on that questionnaire time after time after time again is probably my top three, right? So we'll send out a creative questionnaire, and I'm like, first of all, uh, don't assume somebody knows you, right? So who are you? What do you do? And why does it even matter, right? Because,
Couple
like,
of questions
okay,
to open.
right, like, who cares? Why does it matter? So I think those have to be like my top three questions in my creative questionnaire, because it's not only about the brand but the people behind it ultimately, right? Those type of questions usually help shape a press release. So it's those are probably my top three questions, like on a personal level. Who are you? What do you do? And why does it even matter?
I know for me, back in the day when I was more on the graphic design side, people would come up to me and they go, "Oh, your work is so creative," and I wouldn't feel like that at all. Sometimes it'll be, you get that like you were describing if the agency work, where it's just like this is what you have to do, and
Right.
you're doing it, and you're not designing it for yourself. You're designing it for whoever. You're designing it for the client or the audience, and you're like, this is not creative. But I used to always tell people, I was like, well, everybody's an artist. It's just, it's like you said, it's like almost like a Picasso situation. I'm pretty sure people back in the day kind of looked at Picasso and was like, what, dude, like, what's this? Like, what in the heck is this? This isn't anything. But there are other people who look at it and say, oh my gosh, this is art. It's like everybody has that creative spark within them. So, like, how do you harness your creative spark? How do you foster that? And then how can you get other people? Because especially in your position, you need other people that you work with to be creative and get in that mindset so that you can create something that you both, agree on that's going to be successful for you.
Absolutely. And you know what? Picasso is a great example, because if you look at his paintings, they're all distorted and whatnot, right? But in order to do that type of work, you have to truly understand, the anatomy of the body, and and a lot of so it's just his way of putting it back together. A lot of the times, we come into a project, or to a client, and it's about of taking it apart and putting it back together. I mean, seriously, it's like, what has worked for you in the past? What hasn't been working? Where are you now? Where do you want to go? Right? Let's break it apart and put it back together. And as far as creative input, I think creativity definitely doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? It doesn't happen inside a bubble. We are so blessed down here in Miami, where it's literally a melting pot of cultures. So we have different languages, different people, different cuisine, different music, that you should go for a stroll outside, right? You were talking about last week what Brickell is now, right?
Right.
And it's vibrant, and you can see. I mean, you've experienced it. You see people from all over the place, and you could, the smells, the sounds, the visuals, right? All of that has an impact on your creativity and what you put out. But again, you can find inspiration from the way people blend cigars. You can find inspiration the way a CEO treats their sales force. Because that inner culture, it's also inspiring, right? It's everybody has a tribe, so um, you know, you don't have to, get inspiration from another creative person. If they're really good at what they do, that in itself is inspiring, right? You know, people who lead cigar companies, you know, that's not easy.
No.
It's not easy to do. So that is inspiring. That is, you know, really admirable, because as we know, the cigar industry is probably one of the toughest, most competitive, most niche markets there is.
And I know for me, like this quarantine and being told stay at home and all. I mean, as a creative person, I think you kind of have two sides, especially introverts. You're like, yay, stay at home, gets the stuff done. And then, but there's also a creative part of you that it kind of bounces off other people. And like you said, when you're told don't even like leave your house or your
Right,
home or whatever, that's tough because you're kind of going like, what now? Like how do I keep creative? So, but what I found for me is that I've used this as an excuse to, like you said, to kind of dismantle everything that I had planned for March and April, and who knows what will happen in May. But to kind of say like, how can I get creative? How can I reinvent? Basically, how for me it's like, how can I reinvent how I tell a story? It's
right.
not just about posting it on a website or typing out this 900-word thing and then going, people are going to read it. It was like, how can I get creative and still connect with people, tell the story, and I think creative people too kind of take on a weight. Sometimes I don't know if you feel like that, but sometimes I feel like I spend a lot of time on Instagram, but it's not because I'm wasting time. It's to see what everybody else is doing, to see their designs. Companies post pictures of their new products on Instagram before they do anything else, to see conversations. Like this whole thing I'm doing now is inspired just by seeing what other people were using their time with during quarantine. So I'm like, sometimes creative people and even people who don't consider themselves creative should just take this time, whether you're under a coronavirus threat or not, to like experience the world around you, build that into your work day, just to kind of experience life and get inspired.
Absolutely, and thank goodness for the internet, right? Because you know it provides that vehicle, right? Even though you know we are quarantined, we can we can jump on the phone, we can jump on the computers, and just be transported and then really experience like another culture, whether it be videos, photos. But
Right.
you are your sensors are taking it all in, right? So it's definitely a good time to try something new. And again, you are basically still doing the same thing in a different way, right? So whatever you have planned out, you kind of made a lateral movement and took it apart, and I'm gonna put it together again, but in this platform,
Right.
right? So it's a great it's a great time to get inspired, try something new, stay focused, stay positive, above all, and I think everyone is enjoying this new platform. I think it was a brilliant idea on your behalf.
Well, like I said, I don't take full credit for it. So it's like watching Michael Herklotz and the Lounge Experience podcast. My friends Erica and Amy, I follow them and look. They're always been bold and just do what they want. So like I said, I've been talking about doing podcasting for forever, but it was just the introvert in me, I think, that stopped me from doing it because I was like, ugh, talking to people. I was like, then people, I say, people. I hate the sound of my own voice, having to put it out there and do it and stuff. But now I'm doing it. It's a learning process. It gets better. It's almost like the pancake theory. Your first podcast, your first whatever design is usually not the best, but as you go along, and there's always ways you can always make another pancake. So you can always revisit that interview that doesn't go well or that or whatever and perfect it and just work towards whatever your idea of perfection is.
Absolutely. And you know what? Somebody told me like a really long time ago, listen, it will never be the perfect time to start a family or a business. So just start.
Right.
Now, under the current situations, maybe you were catapulted into doing it. But I mean, we do have plenty of stuff to do, right? So, but if you had gone out and say, well, maybe I need a small studio, maybe I need soundproofing on the walls,
Yeah.
maybe I need maybe I need a couple of lights and a little microphone. And you know what? That's just the introvert in us putting it off, right? And to eventually stepping in front of the camera and actually doing it.
Right.
So that analogy that you just gave, stacking pancakes, that is perfect. Just and again, you can relate as far as writing stories. I tell my daughter, with her schoolwork, I said that the most difficult part about writing is actually start to write. Once you get writing, it just kind of flows. You just organize your idea, make sure it flows, and then, but the hardest part is actually starting.
Yeah, you have, and like you said, you have to start somewhere. I know for me, especially like, I could have easily done this from a magazine, one of our magazine's platforms, and done it, but I was like, I want to do it from mine because it's just me. I'm the only person I have to answer to, and I don't know if you as a creative person feel that way too. But sometimes it's like, I was like, for me, like when I pitch an idea to some people or business, sometimes it's like, okay, you can do that, but you need to meet these 5 criteria before you get to it. And I'm like, that's just too much. And
No.
I have gotten that in the past with different businesses that I've worked with, where it's like, yeah, we can do that, but first, you complete these 5 missions, and then you're like, that's okay, never mind.
Never
I
mind.
didn't bring it up.
No, I think this is the perfect format. Is conversational. It's at eye level. Right? Like
Right.
nobody's, because once you have that magazine title over your head, or once you have whatever title over your head, now it's like I'm looking up at you. Right now, this is eye level. This is pedestrian. That you're approachable. So I think this format is really perfect.
And and I'm just going outside of us here, but I love how this experience, if there's anything good that's come from this experience, is that it's forcing all companies to kind of, like you said, take apart their plans, what they've been doing business as usual, and now there's like a whole new kind of renaissance going on where businesses are having to pivot. How do we engage with our customers without being in a store? Because even
Right.
if I mean, I looked at the news. I mean, what's going on now? I mean, it's like May 1st could come, and we could still be we could still have restrictions in place, basically keeping us from having the old school now kind of store events where we're right next to people and stuff, and this could go on for a little while. So it's like now companies are having to get creative, and I think I've seen a lot more creativity probably in the last month, and it's like finally, like they're getting creative. They're doing, Davidoff is doing a great online seminar tonight. You have
Yes.
Secure Estate doing their virtual hearth. You have
Yes.
the brand owners like getting more comfortable saying, "Okay, I'm ready to get in front of the camera." And if this hadn't happened, I honestly don't think a lot of that stuff would have happened, but it should have,
Right.
because it just brings us all together in a new way.
In a new way. I mean, eventually we are going to get back to normal, whenever that is and whatever that is, right? The new
Right.
normal. But this is the time that companies are using to, like what I just mentioned, you break it down and you put it back together, right? So the way we socialize, we don't have sports, we don't have weddings, we don't have birthdays, and unfortunately, we don't have funerals, right?
But so you can't even have a funeral. You can't even die. You can't even rest in peace right now.
So you could imagine all the things that have been taken away from us. So now is the time that I'm actually talking to most of my clients about strategy. Right, when we get back to normal, what are we going to do to enhance that cigar experience, that cut and light experience? Right, what are we going to bring to the table where it's more of a human connection? Even more so. I mean, we're already having a great time at cigar events. You know what I mean? Drinking and eating and smoking and chatting and whatnot, right? But I think we're doing, we're starting the talks to make that even more so personal, a personal experience in the near future. So this is the time now where we realize, wow, our rituals, our way of doing stuff, it's gone. So when we get back to normal, whenever that is and whatever that is, how do we embrace people back? So that's what we're doing right now. We're talking, we're having those discussions We're crafting up some strategies, and now is the time to do it. Now is the time that we have to break whatever model of events that we had, break it apart and put it back together. It's part of that reinventing cycle.
Some of the our best musical artists, they learned this a long time ago that you can't stay the same. You can't to get that longevity. The ones that who had careers back in the 80s or even 70s and they still are relevant today and you can mention their names and people know who they are, whether good or bad. It's just because they, like you said, they reinvented themselves or they broke the mold of how people view them and see them, and they said, I'm just going to take a chance to continue to do business. Basically, I mean, it's all a business.
And they do that constantly, in order to stay relevant. I mean, your example of Madonna last week was a prime example of that.
Yeah, I mean, look, anytime I can bring up Madonna in a conversation, I'm gonna find a way.
You
But yeah,
game.
but definitely, I mean, I think I always look from working with tobacco business now. I always look at things in a business sort of way. Before I looked at things from a consumer sort of way. So it's like,
Right.
always a daunting task for me to take on tobacco business and go like. I was like, oh, like, that's so boring. Like, how can we, how do we do business stories? But to do that entrepreneurial, like I said, journey and how people can reinvent themselves. How can people break the mold? How can they get people's attention? I mean, to me, that applies to anything. And I don't know about you, but when I create stuff, I try to create something for not the actual like target audience, but for people outside of that audience. So, like, if you
Right.
create a magazine, how can you create a magazine that the father is going to read? He's going to pass it on to the mom, and there might be something even in there that the mom or dad, depending on the article, might say, hey, might pass it on to their son or daughter or whatever that's appropriate. Like, how can you give life to something that's cool that they wouldn't mind sharing? And I think that idea of designing with the intent to share is something that a lot of people don't really think about. They just whether it's a story about the product or just how it looks.
Right. And again, touching on that point is not only, having different, maybe generations relate to that, but also have it transcend, right? So maybe even somebody who doesn't speak the language is looking at your editorial and can find beauty in just the layout, the images, without really understanding what is written, right? So that's also part of that visual aspect, where, oftentimes, we don't work well. You do. I don't. you work with Excel spreadsheets and all that nonsense, but I don't. Right. So
Right.
it's and that's really sometimes the hurdles that we have to get over on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes I turn on the computer and I'm like, all right, I can see that no creative work is going to get done today, right? So it's like, let me go flip to some magazines, find that inspiration, right? So it's not like I'm going to open that Excel file again and I'm going to go to column 3 and row 75 and just pick up where I left off. It sometimes it doesn't work like that. And, my clients will tell you that, it's, I will always pitch 3 ideas at you, right? Based on what I was asked to do. Something that I truly like, something that I think the client is going to like, and what I think the project ultimately should be. So something the client is expecting, something that I lean towards, and then ultimately, come to a halfway point agreement, some sort, let's call it truce and, go this way, which I think you're going to really get the most bang out of exposure, out of branding, out of marketing legs for the project. So it's always that thinking about how it transcends, how it communicates from one person to one generation to another country to where you just don't know where your projects are going to end up. So it has to communicate, it has to transcend. It has no language barriers. It's crazy when you see, so like, you do something, and then, it's off your plate, right? It's done, it's approved. I sent it to the printer. It's off my plate. It's on to the next one.
Right.
And then you see somebody out in Colorado skiing, with a cigar out their mouth. They're like, "Hey, that's the." So you just never know, like, where you're gonna see your work next. So that's kind of, a little bit still like crazy for me to see, like where these cigars end up. And then, the art, the second life they take on when somebody starts pulling the bands off of this, and they start doing like all these murals and posters out of those bands. It's incredible. And you feed off of all of that,
You
right? So
do.
all of that is input, whether you know it or not, right? So it's input, it's input. And then, you process that, and then, eventually you get to do it all over again.
I always say you should always create something that people will want to save. Like, why would you ever create something that people would just look at and go, cool, and they'll throw away? Like you want to create a magazine that people will want to keep. You want to create a cigar band that people, like you said, will want to take pictures of. Because sometimes, I mean, they may say like, oh, this is a great smoke, but what are they? I mean, they can't share the smoking palette, that they have with the world, but they can. What do? They zoom in on the cigar band sometimes, and that's, to me, that's a big compliment to whoever designed that cigar band, because if it's an ugly cigar band, they're just going to smoke it. They're not going to feel inclined to share it with their crowd.
Absolutely. And you can see with cigar boxes, they do purses. They do guitars out of cigar boxes. So you can see it's just yes, you want to make something that transcends, that communicates, and eventually people are just gonna grow attached to and not want to get rid of. Maybe they'll put stamps in there, and leave it in the office. Maybe they'll use it as a bookend, or maybe they'll put them up on the wall. I mean, that's what we really set out to do. Always create a memorable piece. Always exceed the client's expectations, with obviously the customer feedback, the sales rep feedback. Everybody, ultimately we do take all that feedback, but we go ahead and we sort through what we can use and cannot use, so that we can, at the end of the day, ultimately guide the client into the best possible packaging, or presentation, or magazine layout, or photo shoot, or
Yeah, so I guess as we have about 5 minutes left, I mean, what are you
already.
work? I know it goes by quick. I told you. If it's a good conversation, it goes by quickly.
I
If
know.
not, then it's like, oh, we got 30 minutes left. Oh God.
The next one we'll do it. The next one we'll do it up in North Carolina.
Yeah, we'll have to do a change of scenery.
Yes.
Hopefully by then we can be outside or do it or whatever. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But what are you working on right now?
Right now, no one is really being able to pull the trigger on any projects, because factories are shut down in Nicaragua
Right.
and Honduras. So that means that there is no new inventory coming in or anything like that. Like I said, right now it's all about strategy. I'm talking strategy to my clients. We are revisiting how they engage with their customers. We are revisiting how we can improve cigar events once we hit the road again. And just taking it a day at a time. I mean, if they don't know, why should I even press for? I'm only going to take what they give me. So,
Right.
I'm not going to press them for, hey, so what about this project? Well, haven't you heard the news? Everything is on pause, right? So it's I take what they give me, and we do try to stay proactive. So definitely being proactive during this time is very important. Revisiting every single aspect of consumer engagement, see how we can improve that, implement new stuff when that comes around, and just trying to stay busy and just focus on on that side of the business, since the production side of the business is pretty much on hold. Cigar rolling, cigar harvesting, cigar, the printing side of things, the printers are shut down. So, everything is really just on hold. We are focusing on consumer engagement.
And how can people get in touch with you or follow you from here on if they have other questions or want to tap into your services?
At Cigar Package Design on Instagram, Cigar Package Design on Facebook. I'm always a phone call away or a text message away, an email away. The website, cigarpackagedesign.com. You can see some of our other work on there. And, again, I always tell people, whether we end up collaborating on a project or not, I'm always going to give you the time and point you in the right direction. Right? Marketing dollars are hard to come by. So at the end of the day, I'm going to make sure that you measure twice, cut once, and I'm going to give you the best guidance. And that's all I can offer, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, but that's enough.
Yes.
For a lot of these companies.
Yes.
Well, like I said, it's always nice to have a chat with you. I know the last time we saw each other was TPE, which seems like eons ago. It's
Fun
not
times.
that far away, but it feels like it was ages ago. So
yes.
It was nice being able to catch up with you today and
absolutely
have this nice creative conversation. And I know it was definitely the highlight of my day because it gets a little, you're like, oh, well, what am I going to do now? And update, like you said, look at spreadsheets. I've been avoiding the spreadsheet today. So it was a nice break from that, but I'm going to get back to that. And like I said, I look forward to our next run-in with each other, whether it's at PCA, who knows if they're going to have it, but PCA or some other event this year. Look forward to seeing you.
I'm looking forward to our next encounter, and thank you so much for the invite. This hour went by quickly, so thank you.
Thank you.
Like Lewis said yesterday, you are essential to the industry, my friend.
Oh, I try to do my part.
Antoine, see you on the next one.
Good. See you.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.